Okay, good evening, people. We meet here for an extra lecture, and as students join, I would like to start presenting where we had roundabout stopped yesterday, and I need to explain to you all how the Coriolis force works in geography. Of course, it's the same everywhere. Then we saw those two documentaries and how interestingly it was all placed. And the final output needs to be looking like this. Sorry. The final output needs to be looking like this as such. Okay, from a single cell to a multicellular circulation that the atmosphere has. Remember, we have what are called as convective cells. I will just revise these convective cells. I would say um, operate in both the hemispheres as such. Okay, towards the hotter parts of the equator, okay, air particles go up because of the insolation. Once they get cooled towards the tropopause, okay, they will start moving in respective directions, and instead of going all the way to the poles, they will come down at around what is called as the mid latitudes or 30 degrees. Okay, from and you will have a zone of now because these air particles are landing up here, there it's going to be a high pressure zone. Because they went up from here, it's going to be low pressure. From here again, you'll see, and you'll have a similar scenario as far as the southern hemisphere also is concerned. Okay, from here you'll see that they will move in two different directions. This is going to be towards 60 degrees that you're going to have another low pressure, and towards the poles, of course, we have the high pressure. And there you'll see that the air particles move because of their very cold temperatures. When they meet each other, okay, you'll see that the lighter particles are going to go up, and they complete one cell here, they complete the other cell here. So you'll see that every convective cell has four sides to it. Okay, two sides are one side is going to be where particles are going up. Okay, one side is going to be where particles are going down. Okay, this part remains to be studied a lot because this is into the atmosphere. It is believed that that also has some role to play as far as weather conditions concerned. Today we would be interested in this part. Okay, the zones of low pressure or high pressure are areas wherein the particles move vertically up or vertically down. Between these zones, there is a horizontal movement of air particles, and that is what we call as winds. Okay, that's something that we are going to take up today. And before I go into the details, you'll see that normally what happens is you have point A at a higher level, you have point B at a lower level. I spoke about this yesterday also. The normal gradient is straight, but you'll see that in our conditions it is either this way or this way. It curves left or right, and the Coriolis force is responsible for that. Coriolis force affects anything, okay, any liquid or any solid, or of course gaseous also, when it is moving for longer distances and it is on a larger scale. Okay, as we saw in the clip yesterday, that those small whirlpools that you have in your wash basins, etc., are not a direct effect of the Coriolis force. It is basically because of the shape of the vessel that makes it do that as such, whether it moves anti-clockwise or clockwise as such. Okay, the placement of the tap or the displacement of water into that particular object will make it happen that particular way. Now, we saw yesterday, those who have not seen that, you can visit yesterday's lecture. I think I've posted the link for, I don't know whether I've posted it, but I'll just check. But The links are available, and I will make them available to you also. But we have it in our lecture also, yesterday's lecture, day before yesterday's lecture, or yesterday's lecture. Sorry, and you could have a look into that. What does that mean? That if there is a circular surface, okay, and it is moving in a particular direction, and you have people sitting at different directions, if you are going to throw something from a ball from one point to the other, by the time this rotating surface, by the time the ball reaches the person, what happens is the uh, disk moves ahead, and after some time you'll see that this point has moved this way. So consequently, what is going to happen is this guy is going to keep looking here, because that is the straight line for him. Eventually the ball has gone to this particular place. Okay, it's traveling its own straight line. As such, as a consequence, if I keep looking at this person, I feel that the ball has curved in this particular way, and that is basically called as the Coriolis force. Okay, it's not an force actually as such, it's only an optical illusion, as it was said yesterday, because the earth is rotating, and by the time you move from one place to the other, and you're observing all these things from a particular location, you will see all these observations as such. Okay, with this basics for Coriolis force, let us see how actually this happens. Okay, the geography of it, I would rather say. Let me say this is the low pressure zone. I'll explain to you zone wise, and let us say this is the high pressure zone. Okay, don't mind my uh, geometry of the zones. Okay, I'm taking that liberty for that. Now, let us assume that out of the two pressure zones, high pressure up and low pressure down, okay, we are looking for air particles outside. Okay, these are the air particles. Okay, we have lined air particles, say probably along each latitude, and then the earth moves from west to east, right? It rotates like this. Okay, so all of these, say this is an hypothetical situation, but this is what actually happens. Okay, we now, what are we going to do? We are going to take a race for these people, for these people. Now, it's, though we call it a race, it's not actually a race as such. Okay, all of them are going to run at the same pace. All of them are supposed to be running the same pace, and they're going to be running for 24 hours. Same pace, same 24 hours as such. Now, at the end of the first 24 hours, what is going to happen? Obviously, the particle near the equator, that's this particle, is going to be running for a longer time, is going to be running for the same time, of course, but a longer distance. Okay, same time, same speed, but a longer distance. Comparatively, this guy here is going to run for the same time, same speed, but a shorter distance. Okay, but if they are running for 24 hours, what actually would happen at the end of the 24 hours? We'll see that they will line up like this. Okay, this is going to fall back, this is going to travel a bit more, 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 and this is going to be traveling a bit more. Okay, same speed, same time, but because of the curvature getting lesser and lesser, you'll see that at the end of 24 hours, this is the alignment of your particles. Okay, what is happening is those particles which are here, they are falling behind. Okay, this is called as a lag. Now, because of the lag, any individual in this belt, any individual will be experiencing this lag. Okay, a person standing here now, this would look a bit clumsy, but then for this individual, these particles, the lag particles, are basically wind coming from the east. Remember, actually the particles are lagging behind, but then these particles are hitting a person from the east, and that is why this guy will feel that particles are coming from the east, and that is why you're going to call all the winds coming here as easterlies. Okay, if you remember, they are also called as trade winds. This is the simple geography of the Coriolis force explain the curvature of the earth. Okay, is going to impact. We are going to see it between every pressure beds, every two zone, between the zone of every two pressure beds. But then it's going to be different. Now we are calling them easterlies here. You would be calling them westerlies. Okay, that's it. Okay. So what happens is, okay, this is falling back. Okay, as a consequence. Now this is high pressure. This is low pressure. Look into the geography of that. When particles start moving from here all the way to here, what is going to happen is they are slowly going to lag. They are slowly going to lag and fall behind. Okay, it wants to travel from here to here, but gradually the distance goes on increasing, so it's going to lag behind. And when I'm standing here and facing this part, I will feel that winds in the northern hemisphere are deflected to the right. Is okay. They are going to be deflected to the right as such. Okay, actually they are lagging behind. I would feel that they are deflected to the right as such. This would further be explained. We are going to do the same process for the mid latitudes now. Let us say this is the 0 degree zone, a low pressure zone at 60 degrees. This is the low pressure. Now, the same thing we are going to do, but I'm not going to invest much time to explain you what actually is happening, because you now know that these particles have to run a race at the same speed for 24 hours. At the end of this, what is going to happen? What is going to happen now is the same thing. Okay, the particles which have to run a smaller race obviously are going to go ahead. So in this zone now, you are going to have the particles aligned similarly as we saw in this zone also, but the conditions have changed. You have high pressure here, you have low pressure here. So it moves from, it's still moving to the right, the deflection is to the right. But for an individual here now, okay, now this is not a lag, obviously, this is not a lag. Okay, this is falling ahead. The particles are falling ahead, they are not lagging behind. Because if I start from this high pressure, by the time I reach this low pressure, the curvature of the earth is further less. So I will be catching speed. So these particles will be falling over or falling ahead. And this guy here would feel that the winds are blowing from the west. Thus, these winds are going to be called as the westerlies. Okay, so its mechanism is the same. It's only that the curvature of the earth goes on decreasing, and all. And as a consequence, you will have, okay, the winds changing their direction, okay, in literally 360 degrees or at least 180 degrees. Okay, while they seem to be blowing, or rather they blow from the east near the equator, the trade winds as they are called, or the easterlies they are called. In the mid latitudes, you have the westerlies. If you have any query regarding this, you can please ask, basically because we're going to shift to polar easterlies, and we need to understand that from a different point of view. If you have any question in understanding, if you have had any problem in understanding, it's simple that we take a hemisphere, and in the hemisphere we know that the circumference along each latitude is going to go on decreasing. The maximum circumference is at the equator. The minimum circumference, which actually is of just a point, is at the poles. And all said and done, what happens is that these particles, okay, when they all the atmosphere. Now, why I put it together? It's basically the whole atmosphere moves together, but you'll see that the atmospheric particles near the equator are going to cover larger distances, so they're going to fall back. Atmospheric particles near mid latitudes are going to cover smaller distances, so they fall behind. So all the particles between the low and the high in the tropical regions, they arrange themselves in such a way that you feel that these particles are the particles on longer circumferences are going to fall back. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
What is the role of these pressure belts in blowing of winds?
Winds blow basically because of difference in pressure. It happens because of difference in pressure. Now you'll see that I'll give a very simple and day-to-day example. You are breathing right now. I am breathing right now. Everybody is breathing right now. Why does this breathing activity happen? This breathing happens. See, inhalation happens when the pressure in the lungs is low as compared to the pressure outside. So you'll see that all the air is going to rush in the lung. And then what happens is, once that is done, pressure outside gets low and pressure inside the lungs gets high. So it moves from high to low. It's a gradient sort of a thing. It's a gradient. It's just like a seesaw. In a seesaw, what do? Okay, you see you have a seesaw like this, right? Okay, it's a physical gradient. Here, you call it as a physical gradient. That this height is more and this height is less. What is this height? This is basically value, some value as such. So whenever you're going to have two values as such, okay, you'll see that the movement is going to be from a higher value to a lower value. The same thing happens as far as difference in pressure gradient is concerned. Okay, air particles are going to move from high pressure to low pressure. Got it? Or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sure. We'll move ahead. And as I said, the same thing in a much lesser circumference, that's in the mid latitudes, leads to faster movement and falling ahead as such, and that's why these are called as the westerlies. Now, understanding the easterlies is the best thing of all of these, because I said this purposely, basically because it's very interesting to know about it. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just draw the sector of it here. Yes, we are now going to speak about this particular area. You have low pressure in the 60 degrees latitude, and you have high pressure in the poles, high pressure. So normally winds need to blow like this, but we know that they blow like this. Okay, now this easterly here and this easterly here, okay, the reasons are different, and that is why they are called as equatorial easterlies and polar easterlies. Okay, now what I want you all to do is I want you all to understand this diagram, or you are looking at this diagram from the top. So I'm going to draw a circle. The center of it is the poles. Center of it is the poles. This circle is what I'm going to refer to. It's a bit complex, and that is why if you don't understand, you ask me. Okay, if you don't understand, you please ask me. I'm now going to draw. Okay, what happens is, yes, you see that you're going to have high pressure here, and you're going to have low pressure here. Okay, and obviously they are going to be deflected to the right, because this is the northern hemisphere. But this deflection has something to add to, basically because you'll see that the winds here are very, very strong. Why this strongness is there is basically because of the fact that the curvature is one very steep here, and the circumference is very, very less. In fact, you'll see that the pole is just a point. We have just put it here. So now we are, see what we were doing is, till now we were looking at these points placed side by side. That is of course going to happen, okay, side by side. But I want you all to concentrate on these points also now. What happens is we need to look at these points also. Okay, it's not from see, this is latitude to latitude. Okay, from H to L, this is latitude to latitude. Okay, and these points that I have drawn now, it's along the latitude. And this happens along each latitude, which is 60 degrees and beyond. Okay, theoretically. Now, you'll see that given the small circumference here and the intensity of the variation, because remember, H is very cold here. The poles are very cold and the low pressure is comparatively high. So the pressure gradient is very steep. So the air particles start moving very fast. And as they start moving very fast, they get deflected because of the Coriolis force. Now, add to this, what happens is each of them are now running this race. Okay. Now for them, this race is very, very, very small. Just compare 44,000 kilometers that a point on the near the equator has to run in 24 hours. And this could be just a few hundred kilometers. This should be a few hundred kilometers now. And the speed, okay, that's the speed of the whirl along that particular area is so huge that what happens is that when the earth is moving, now we know that it is moving from west to east like this. Okay, this. Okay. Now again, it's very interesting to note that understanding east and west near the poles is a bit difficult. Okay, we understand east and west here by knowing the location of the sun. We know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west as well. But imagine that 6 months, beyond 66 degrees particularly, 6 months, the sun is not going to be there. And the other 6 months, the sun is not going to set. So if there is no rising of the sun and there is no setting of the sun, it becomes very complex for these people. Possibly, if you look in the books of the small kids here, they would not be having this statement as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west as such. Very funny, but then that is how it could be as far as the students learning their geography in this area is concerned. It's a relative thing, but then that is how it is. Anyway, so you'll see that these particles which are along a particular latitude, we have placed them, not between latitudes as such. The speed of the spinning of the earth makes all of these start moving very fast. Okay. Now what happens is these particles, they start moving, they get into the influence of the speed of the spinning, and they start moving along this particular point. They move very, very fast. And by the time every particle moves, the first particle reaches here. It reaches here. Okay, you'll see that the last particle is still to take off from here. But the other particles, because the curvature is so less, it has already come back. So what happens? Okay, I'll give you a very potent example in this scenario as such. Now what happens is, I know unfortunately these days it's all about not going to school. In fact, it's offline as such. Now you'll see that you normally have a kindergarten school, right? And you're going to have a teacher in a kindergarten school. Okay, let me draw the teacher as such. Okay, here, this is how the teacher is going to be. Maybe she's wearing some modern clothes as such, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, in the kindergarten school, you have kids. And you'll see that what do you do in the kindergarten school? Okay, you don't do hydrodynamics and thermodynamics, etc. You just play all throughout the day. You have your dabbas, etc. And what happens along with that is that In between, you have your loo breaks. You go to the bathroom. The kids are taken to the bathroom. Everyone separately does not go, but then they make a line, etc., etc. So you'll see that what happens is that this female is going to take these kids to the loo break. They are in a line. Okay. And you have to imagine these kids to be the wind particles. Okay. Now they start for their march, I would say, to the nearby restroom. Now it so happens that this female on her way meets another female. Now, let us say she is the headmistress, and let us say she is wearing a sari, etc., etc. Okay. For a moment, both of them stop. She wishes them, "Hello, ma'am," this, that. Now, I should have drawn it the other way. In fact, I'll do it do that because there should not be any confusion in your minds as to why they go from this. So, God, I've just wrapped up everything. Good for me. I'll just draw it again. Okay, this is the pole. This is 60 degrees. Let us say we were till now looking into particles on each latitude. Now we are looking for particles along a single latitude. Okay, the Earth is spinning like this from west to east as such. Now what is happening is that you have this female who is taking kids to the restroom. Okay, you have kids who are following her in a straight line. Okay, absolutely straight line. You're going to have some girls in them, you're going to have some boys in them, and so on and so forth. We are putting them as the air particles. These air particles here, these dots, okay, they are side by side to each other. Now this female meets another female. She is, let us say, someone wearing specs, etc., and she is the headmaster of that particular school. So obviously, this lady has to meet and greet her. Okay, and so on and so forth. So for a moment, she will stop. She will speak to her, how are the classes going, etc., etc. And a couple of seconds pass by. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, small kids. Now, why did I give you an example of kindergarten? Small kids, they are hardly worried about what is happening in the world. So you'll see that what will happen is that this person, first, number one, will see that my teacher has stopped, so she will stop. Okay, possibly this also will stop. This may stop, may not stop. These people, you'll see how they are. Okay, they seem to be walking the other way, and you'll see that as a consequence, what will happen is they don't know what has happened at the start of the line, and they will come and gather. Okay, in the next 15 seconds, what is going to happen? You're going to have a crowd here. Okay, it's all they are going to gather in a bunch here. And suddenly, you know how they are. So they're going to make a lot of noise and halla gulla, and immediately both these ladies will realize that the line has been broken. So this teacher who is in, or this headmistress who needs to command this now, she will just shout at the class saying that you must have, you can easily imagine what must have happened. She will shout at the class that students, what is happening? Where is the line? Okay. So what will happen is these students, they will readjust themselves. They have come here, but they will immediately readjust themselves, and they will fall back into a line. They will fall back into a line. Okay, and then this is going to happen. Then they'll move, and rest of the things are all history, I would say. Something very similar to this happens, that these particles who have started their journey early will arrive here. Okay, they'll reach here. The last particles are yet to start their journey, but they have got so much of speed that they cannot stop here. So they'll bounce into this and rebound back. They will bounce into the bunch of air particles and they will rebound back. Okay, this rebound, I would say, particularly, this is the low pressure, this is the high pressure. Now you can imagine that we are looking at this. This is the top view. This is the side view. So these particles were going this way and they've come here and they will rebound back. This rebound is seen as polar easterlies. Okay? This rebound is seen as polar easterlies. The area is so less that all of them get crowded, and this crowd, along with the energy that is generated with the spin of the Earth at that particular latitude, okay, that provides the energy, and thus this rebounding is seen as winds coming from the east, and that is why they're called as the polar easterly. This is a very interesting thing to note as to how winds change their directions in respective latitudinal regions. As such, we can see here, I'll just put this up as a, okay, you'll see this is the polar easterlies. Okay, we have seen how the westerlies go. Okay, and then these are the northeast trade winds, or the equatorial easterlies, as they are also called as such. Okay, any problem with understanding the directions as such? Since you're, see, I don't do this with the art students as such. You are science students, and that's why I thought of sharing how these winds blow in these. These, by the way, are called as global wind systems. These are called as global winds. Okay, you have actually three types of winds as such. I'll just highlight them for you. The first type of winds are called as global, and we have done three of them right now. 1, 2, 3. These are the trade winds, also called as the easterlies. Then you have the westerlies, and you have the polar easterlies. Okay, they are called as global basically because they are annual. At no point of time you'll see that you will feel that they are not there. Throughout the year they are there. Then you have something which is called as these are also called as primary winds, by the way. Then you have what are called as secondary winds. Secondary winds are those winds which are basically seasonal. Okay, so your cyclones are secondary winds, and you'll see that the most important example of a secondary wind, okay, because they change with season, the direction changes with, they occur seasonally or the direction changes, is our very own monsoon. This is a secondary wind system. Okay, and third is what are called as tertiary. Okay, these are local winds. Okay, local winds, you'll see that land and sea, you'll see that they will be in a group. Okay, valley and mountain. Okay, I would not go into the details of how they operate, etc., etc. I just want you all to get a clear idea of the levels of wind systems: primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary are global winds. Okay, secondary are seasonal. Okay, example cyclones and monsoons. And tertiary are local winds as such. By the way, you'll see that these valley and mountain and land and sea breezes. In fact, there is one theory wherein the monsoon also initially was called as a huge land and sea breeze. But you'll see that as far as land and sea or local winds, etc., are concerned, their duration is not seasonal. We all know that. It is diurnal. During one part of the day, winds blow in a particular direction. In the other part of the day, that's first 12 hours, it's different. Daytime it is different, nighttime it is different. And that is why people had to reboot this particular theory that monsoon is a land and sea. Okay, you'll see actually it works like a land and sea. We are understanding initially it as a land and sea made it very easy to understand how the monsoon actually behaves. Okay, it's very similar to land and sea, but it happens on a seasonal scale. That the summer the land gets heated and you have the low pressure, and we all know that the winds from the sea, that's the Arabian and the Indian Ocean, get pulled all the way. Indian Ocean particularly, get pulled towards the mainland. And as you have the start of the monsoon here, and at the end of October, you'll see that the land gets colder, and the water is warmer comparatively. So the land now gets high pressure, the water gets low pressure, and at the same time, what is happening is down there, Australia gets very hot. So it is pulled there. So you'll see that it's the only wind system in the world. Okay, and that's why you'll see that the monsoon is one of the most studied seasonal wind system of all the winds. Of all the winds, the monsoon is the most studied. You'll see that the number of PhDs done on monsoon is much higher in Europe than in India, okay, or the Indian subcontinent as such. Okay, there are the scientists who are working in what are called as working groups as such. Okay, they work together and so on and so forth. So this is as far as the wind systems are concerned. Now, so you'll see that we have done the atmospheric circulation. Based on the atmospheric circulation, we know that you have pressure belts. Between the pressure belts, you have global winds. Is something that we need to understand as such. Okay, we did this also. And now there is something that we have to understand further also as such. Okay, you'll see that this is a animation. Okay, I'll just allow it to run a bit and then I'll tell you what actually is happening. Now, this is again, I would say, a geographical liberty that I've said. Okay, towards the left side, something that is moving. Okay, and in that you see those something that is moving is nothing but the convective cells. The yellow dot is nothing but the sun. Okay, and you'll see that the sun tends to move up and down. What does that mean? It's basically the seasonal change of the sun moving towards the north and towards the southern hemisphere, the summer solstice and the winter solstice and so on and so forth, isn't it? Now, why does it happen? As I said, that for our convenience, we have taken this straight, but we know that the axis of the earth is actually at an angle of 23.5 degrees. Okay, so because of that, you're going to have this season. Okay, and the sun, okay, would apparently seem to move towards the north and south. The sun is actually not moving. It's, as I said and earlier also, that because of the tilt in the axis, okay, you'll see that it seems to move in the north and the south. This is basically the cause for what is learned as shifting of pressure belts. Now, why do we have shifting of pressure belts? You'll see that in the equinox time, which is here, okay, the sun was at the equator. Now it seems to go down. As it goes down, the insolation in the southern hemisphere will increase. Now it is coming up, so the insolation in the northern hemisphere is increasing. So you'll see that it is the and that's why it is called as the thermal equator also. That is called as the thermal equator. This is also called as the ITCZ, if you remember. It is also called as the ITCZ. And it is this ITCZ which makes this shifting of pressure belts possible. Okay, it pushes the other belts, okay, to make them larger and smaller. Actually, it's only the polar cells which grow, or they shrink and they increase as such. Otherwise, you'll see that the Ferrel cell and the Hadley cells in the respective hemisphere, they don't shrink or increase. Approximately, they stay the same size as such. Okay. To understand this, I would like to throw light on this diagram here. You'll see that it is here that you can see that the central one is basically the equinox position. Okay, the right one to the equinox position, it's of course December, basically because all of this has shifted south. And this is the June condition wherein all of this has shifted north. And as a consequence, you'll see that the other ones also shift, and this shift is around 5 to 10 degrees, not 10, of course, is an exaggerated number, but around 5 degrees of latitude north and south as such. Okay, and this is how they keep on shifting as such. So always remember that with atmospheric circulation will come pressure belts. With pressure belts, you have to also understand shifting of pressure belts. And having understood this, I purposely kept it back, but then it's following the pressure belts. This is a seasonal occurrence. And pressure belts basically are all built around the central pressure belt, that is the equatorial low pressure. When it shifts, okay, you'll see that it makes everyone move as such. And that is why this is called as the engine of the atmospheric circulation. And in fact, it's also called as the engine of the Indian monsoons. I would not go, though we have it in our topic, I would not, syllabus, I would not go into making much more comments on the Indian monsoon and how the ITCZ is basically making its move because of this as such. So this is what I wanted to explain. Now, you see that these particularly diagrams are diagrams of pressure belts, which are more conventional. Okay, you'll see that if you want more precise in the sense they're not absolutely like that, but then more to reality patterns of pressure belts, they are actually like this. That's the one here. Okay, you'll see that because you have more of land in the northern hemisphere and water, okay, intermixing of land and water, you'll see that you don't have a continuous high pressure belt. Okay, it breaks. Okay, it breaks with high pressures in between. Similarly, you'll see that the subpolar areas also along the low pressure. Okay, you're going to have low pressures which are broken because of distributed land and water arrangements as such. This distribution occurs in the high pressures of the southern hemisphere also, but because along from this latitude onwards, you have a water extensively, you'll see that the subpolar low pressure belt or the polar high pressure belt, they are continuous. They are continuous. So this is again something that you have to keep in mind. Okay, the other day I spoke about the tropic, the jet streams as such. These are the tropical jet streams. You'll see that you are going to have the actual jet streams here between the Ferrel cell and the polar cell as along 60 degrees. Okay, I don't think we need to go into the details of jet streams because, as I said, that it's for advanced level studies in climatology. Those who are interested can look for the material on the internet if they want to go into the details of that as such. Okay, this, as I said, is again what I explained to you all as far as Coriolis force and its impact is concerned. Now we need to go ahead with the hydrological cycle, and now till now you'll see that we have not introduced water anywhere in the system. Okay, all we have been speaking about is the pressure, etc., etc. Yes, we spoke about water vapor, but nobody asked where does this come from, etc., etc. So very important component of the atmosphere, particularly the troposphere, is water. And before we go into understanding how water enters and goes out and how it plays a role as a weather phenomena in the form of precipitation, either in rain or hail or snow, etc., etc., we need to understand a few things about water, the hydrological cycle, which happens to be a part of your syllabus. Tomorrow we'll not have an extra lecture, but day after tomorrow, I again want an extra lecture. That's on Friday. Say tentatively we'll be planning an extra lecture on Friday as well, where now we will now come into one of the most important and distinctive component of weather systems, because you see that you don't see temperature, you don't see pressure, you don't see winds also, but yes, what you can see is water falling Okay, and that's why understanding the water circulation in the weather helps us to may understand the climate further. So as a part of your syllabus, we'll go into a bit of your detail of how water plays a role. Okay, we'll see that from say solid to liquid, liquid to gas, and it's the only liquid which is available to us in the atmosphere in all the three states of matter at the same time as such. Okay, and then this melting, it requires some energy. This, okay, all this is going to be done. Okay, we'll try to do it in short. This is Coriolis reflection. Then we'll speak about evaporation and condensation and some other features of water, but that's going to be for some other time. And after that, of course, we'll sum up in another lecture. We'll require one more lecture, and we'll sum up oceanography also. Okay, because we are not supposed to be doing 100% of your syllabus. We need to cut it down. Let me see where I can cut it down and how much I can cut it down. For today now, we have finished with this part, that's atmospheric circulation, development of pressure belts, and the blowing of winds between these global winds, seasonal winds, and of course, we have local winds also. I will end the show here, and let me come back to, yes. So that's the presentation for today. And if you have any questions for me, you can ask me right away as such.